Hey, welcome to another telecast of Healthy Aging Network with host Kathy Tutt. Kathy Tutt is a family consumer sciences educator with Clark County. And today she's going to be talking with Jennifer Lobb. Jennifer Lobb is a family consumer sciences educator with Franklin County. So welcome.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for another episode of the Healthy Aging Telecast. Today I have my guest is Jenny Lobb, who is a family consumer sciences educator with Ohio State University Extension in Franklin County. And we're going to be talking about nutritional considerations for aging adults. So I want to start out with Jenny, giving you a chance to introduce yourself and tell us about your interest and how you got involved with some of the information related to aging.
Yeah, thanks for having me today, Kathy. I am a dietitian by training. And prior to coming to Extension, I did some nutrition counseling in the private sector. And a lot of the clients I saw were interested in weight loss, which seems to be a concern, especially as adults enter middle age and beyond. And as a dietitian, I think it's really interesting when we think about aging, how there are two big concerns nutrition-wise with aging. On one hand, there's the concern of overnutrition, of getting too much to eat and gaining weight. And then there's also a concern at times of malnutrition, about not getting too much or not getting enough to eat. And both are valid concerns. And so when I first started with OSU Extension, I had the opportunity to work with Kathy. I reviewed one of the modules in the Aging Smart curriculum that covers some of the nutrition needs of older adults and why it's important to take those nutrition needs into consideration and so forth.
Can you tell me a little bit about our older adults and the things that they find to be very important for them as they age?
I think one of the biggest values to many older adults is maintaining independence, wanting to be able to live independently, to age in their own homes. And a big component of that is preserving quality of life by preventing chronic disease and managing any chronic disease that may be diagnosed. We're talking about things like diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, and so forth. Because we know that as we live longer, and people are living longer today, risk for chronic disease increases. In fact, most older adults do have chronic disease. Depending on your source of statistics, you'll see that anywhere from 80 to 90% of older adults have at least one chronic disease, and about 3/4 have two or more. And nutrition can help to prevent the onset of those conditions, and it can also help even when one does have a chronic disease. Maintaining a healthy diet can help them manage that disease and live well and independently.
You know, a while back we talked and you were mentioning a survey that was done by the International Food Information Council, where it talked about people who look online or try to get information about nutrition. How does that look different for older adults than maybe someone who is middle-aged searching for nutrition information?
Yeah, it's interesting. As up through middle age, most adults are most interested in information related to weight loss. When they're looking for health and nutrition related information online. When adults reach an older age, I think weight loss is still in the top 5, but there are other concerns that surpass weight loss as the top concern. Things like maintaining their brain health and memory, preventing heart disease, and so forth. So we know that there are additional concerns that nutrition can address to help people live well as they age.
So you said how important nutrition does play an impact on their quality of life and their ability to remain independent. But what are some of the things that may interfere with the nutritional intake of older adults?
There are a lot of changes that happen as we age, there are different sensory changes that take place. Our smell or our sense of taste can change, sometimes decrease, and that can impact appetite. Sometimes your ability to chew or eat the foods that you most enjoy decreases, and that can really be a downer for older adults, having to change the types of foods they eat or how much of certain foods that they eat. Sometimes when older adults are living alone, loneliness can be a concern. Not having assistance or having a dining companion can keep some older adults from getting the quantity and quality of food that they need. And then fixed incomes can sometimes be a challenge as well. If someone is living on a fixed income, Social Security checks, for example, then sometimes being able to purchase desired food and purchase the quantity of food that is desired can be challenging.
That makes really good sense. When I think about sensory changes too, with, eyesight, maybe not being able to read recipes or even the tags with the nutritional information, our nutritional facts on the pamphlets that they read, they can't necessarily read that, or it might even make it harder for them to prepare a meal at home.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's not just, your sense of smell or taste that could impact your appetite and your nutritional intake. Your sight plays a role as well.
And even, hearing. My mom used to really fear going to the grocery store because if she had to ask someone questions, she was embarrassed because she couldn't hear what they were trying to tell her. So, I think that has impacted some older adults as well. So we know the different things that will affect nutritional intake, but what are some of the things that older adults can do to overcome some of these barriers?
Well, the good news is there are steps that older adults can take to help mitigate these challenges. One is keeping up with your care, with preventative care. We talked about how those changes to the different senses can impact nutrition. So keeping appointments, your eye doctor appointments, your dental appointments can help older adults maintain their sensory function and perhaps catch problems before they get too serious. And in addition to that, maybe preparing foods a little bit differently as changes do take place, using different herbs and spices and seasonings to add flavor to food as sense of taste changes, preparing food differently, so maybe steaming food or grinding or grating tough foods if ability to chew is changing. Asking for help when you need it. Asking for help can go a long way. And then in addition to that, we talked about how fixed income can be a challenge for many older adults. And there are many things that one can do to be proactive in managing and stretching their food dollars, meal planning, looking for deals, using the circular ads and coupons to look for deals. If possible, maybe buying things in bulk and either sharing them with a family member or friend or freezing for later if your food dollars allow you to buy in bulk. And then if you're able to, using the unit price tags. I know, Kathy, you mentioned that sometimes those can be really hard to see, especially if you have any problems with eyesight, but that is an additional tool that might help folks who are on a fixed income try to stretch their food dollars a little bit.
I have one question, just going back, you mentioned about spicing it up or adding in different flavors to the food. So if I want to just add extra salt to my meal to make it taste better, is that a good idea, or are there other options that I could put in there?
Good point. Yeah, so just adding salt would not be the best strategy. We know that sodium, excess sodium actually contributes to heart disease and high blood pressure and so forth. So trying to venture out and try some different herbs and spices, things like your basil or your oregano or creating your own taco seasoning without the extra salt or sodium, getting creative with lemon or citrus or other flavorings. Those are all great ways to season food without adding extra sodium, because most Americans get way more sodium than they need. So we don't want to complicate any problems there.
So one of the things that you talked about a minute ago too was loneliness and how that might impact a person's their nutrition. We don't necessarily always equate those to each other, but what are some of those things that can impact nutrition as far as loneliness goes?
Yeah, loneliness can make quite a difference in one's nutritional intake. If someone is feeling like, sitting down to a nutritious meal is just not worth the effort because it's just not a pleasant experience to eat by themselves, then that can take a toll over time. And so what I encourage people to do if they're cooking for one or two and maybe feel that way, that sitting down to a nice meal isn't worth the time or effort, I encourage them, first of all, to take a different perspective and realize that their health and their nutrition is worth that care. It is worth that attention. It may help if they use special dishes, or actually set a place for themselves, put a centerpiece or some nice flowers on the table, just to make the environment a little bit more pleasant and appealing, and something to look forward to and enjoy. And for some, if you have friends or family members or even neighbors nearby, it might be fun to start something like an eating club, or some sort of a club or a group where you prepare recipes together, or not necessarily together, but where you try different recipes and share them with each other. So maybe take turns on a rotating schedule where you and your friends or neighbors are trying different recipes and sharing them with each other, so that not everyone has to cook and eat by themselves every day.
Yeah, I noticed that in some of the long-term facilities for older adults, they do have like congregate meals now, rather than meals being delivered to the room. They kind of set it up more like a restaurant where they can come in and eat with the group, where they get a chance to relax and even eat a little bit slower and enjoy the flavors and just talk over dinner, which I think really impacts, makes yourself slow down and take some time for your food and for you. So can you tell me a little bit about how nutrition changes as we age, what we need, what are some of the things that might impact the choices that we make in our food?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the biggest changes I mentioned briefly as I introduced myself, as we age, unfortunately, our metabolism slows, which makes it easier to put on unwanted weight. In addition to that, many older adults tend to be less active, more sedentary. Their lean muscle mass decreases, and that can decrease your calorie needs even farther. And in addition to those metabolic changes that are going on, many older adults are on medications that could interact with food. They might experience certain illnesses that can stress the body and require additional protein or other nutrients to have a full recovery. And along with metabolism changes taking place as we age, our bodies sometimes become less efficient at absorbing certain nutrients. So putting extra effort into getting what we call nutrient-dense foods, those are foods that provide a lot of nutrients relative to their calorie content, is kind of the best way to ensure that older adults are getting the nutrition that they need as they're consuming less calories as a result of those metabolic changes taking place.
So some of those foods that have a little bit more punch to their power without added calories would be one of those things that we look to. Does medication impact the way that we, our food may, our body may metabolize food as well?
Yeah, so there are, they always say when you're prescribed a new medication, you go to pick it up at the pharmacy, they always ask, do you have any questions for your pharmacist? And then you get the whole list of possible side effects or interactions. And if you are on a new medication, it's worth looking through going through that detail that is provided and asking questions. You might even ask the pharmacist, are there any known food interactions associated with this medicine? Because certain medicines may make it harder for your body to absorb certain nutrients. Some medications could impact your sense of taste or your appetite, or even lead to a decreased sense of thirst, and hydration and nutrition are closely linked as well. So yes, your medications can impact your nutrition.
Are there any specific meals? I know you talked a little bit about proteins and those type of things, but if we focus more on food and the food that people can consume, are there any recommendations or any ideas that you could give us on how we could eat a more balanced diet as we get older?
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned nutrient-dense foods, and again, those are foods that provide lots of nutrients relative to their calories. And My Plate, which is the USDA icon, the USDA food guidelines put into a picture form for Americans, is a great reference, whether you are 2 or 102. Those food groups that are on My Plate are those food groups that provide lots of nutrients relative to the calories they contain. So we're thinking about things like your fruits and vegetables, grains, especially whole grains, lean proteins, low-fat dairy. Those foods that are contained in those food groups are going to provide your body with the nutrients that you need without a lot of extra stuff that we don't need. And so you also want to think about what's not on My Plate. So your foods that are desserts or sweetened beverages, those are foods that really don't have a lot of nutrients to them. But things like the fruits and vegetables, whole grains, lean protein, low-fat dairy are going to be great sources of needed nutrients.
I noticed on there in the purple it says protein, and we talked a little bit about the cost of food earlier as a barrier, and also inability to have food that we can chew. So aside from steak or chicken, are there other proteins that they might be able to supplement in that would be less costly?
Yeah, we often think about protein as we think of meats first when we think about protein, but there are non-meat sources of protein as well. Things like peanut butter, your beans, eggs, and those are not only easier to chew, they can also be less expensive, less costly than some of those meat proteins that come to mind.
So are there any specific type of plans that people can follow to make it a little bit more, I love the plate look, but are there any like foods or meal plans that are recommended for nutrition?
Yeah, so if you want something a little bit more structured than My Plate, again, there's nothing wrong with My Plate. It's a great start. There are a few additional eating plans that have been well researched that I could recommend. One of them is the Mediterranean diet, which gets its name because it reflects foods that are common in the Mediterranean region. You think about what grows and what is relatively available and abundant in that region. So you think about things like olives and olive oil, fish, and lots of fruits and vegetables, lots of whole grains. So again, these are nutrient-dense foods that fall into those food groups that we covered in My Plate. It's just a different eating plan that may provide a little bit more structure. So in this eating plan, you're thinking about daily consumption of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and healthy fat, weekly consumption of proteins like fish or poultry, beans or eggs, a moderate intake of dairy, limited intake of red meat, and then one unique aspect of this eating plan is an emphasis on meals shared with others. Another eating plan that I could recommend is the DASH diet. This stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. It is a diet that was specifically created to help people manage high blood pressure or hypertension. And like my plate and the Mediterranean diet, the basic components are the same. So you have an emphasis on your fruits and vegetables, your whole grains, and you're avoiding the sweets and desserts and things that don't fit into those food groups. And this one as well, you're choosing your either lean meats or plant-based proteins like the beans or nuts and seeds if you're able to chew those items. And then there's one that is a hybrid of the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet. It's called the MIND diet. And so it stands for the Mediterranean DASH Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. So that is a mouthful, but this diet is a hybrid of the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet, and it has been proven that it can help prevent Alzheimer's disease and help protect memory. So I would recommend any one of those diets or eating plans. Again, whichever one you choose, you're focusing on the same components: vegetables, lean proteins like nuts and beans, fruits, whole grain, and lean proteins.
Can they just research these? Could they just Google or look information up or go to the library to get books with just these specific eating plans and get more information?
Yeah, any of the above. You could find resources at the library. You could find resources online. You could certainly reach out to us in Extension. We'd be happy to help point you in the right direction for more information.
So let's go a little bit about the specific types of things like we saw on the My Plate, but just kind of breaking down a little bit more about the important nutrients for healthy aging.
Yeah, so all of those eating plans, all of those diets contain nutrients that are needed for healthy aging. Protein is one. Protein can help prevent illness and boost your immune system so that you recover from illness more quickly if you do get sick. Calcium and vitamin D, which can help build and maintain strong bones. Potassium, which can help prevent high blood pressure. And then vitamin B12 and folate protect memory. So those are just some of the important nutrients that are contained in those food groups within those nutrient-dense eating plans that help with healthy aging.
Yeah, as older people get older, we have gotten into habits. Breaking those habits is difficult, wouldn't you say?
Yes, so we get into habits, and changing habits is kind of the name of the game in Extension. We're trying to help people not only direct them to the right information, but resources to help create new habits to improve health and wellness. So I would just encourage you, if you are interested in trying to make some dietary changes to protect your health as you age, to check out one of those eating plans that we mentioned, check out My Plate, reach out to Kathy or I or your local extension office for more information.
I would just say, if you're feeling lonely and you're not preparing food for yourself, you're not eating healthy, follow some of those suggestions earlier, because the chances are that some of your friends are going through the same thing. And so it could just completely enlighten your lives and bring healthy nutrition if you spend some time together and share meals that way.
Well, thank you very much. It was very informative. We're with the Healthy Aging Network with host Kathy Tutt. Kathy Tutt is a family consumer sciences educator in Clark County, along with Jennifer Lobb. Jennifer is a family consumer sciences educator in Franklin County. And again, if you have questions, Kathy and Jenny will be glad to answer those questions. So take note of the screen. Thank you for listening.